Welcome to the Creative Mystic, where strong women wield magic and ancient wisdom. Chapter 7. It's Alive, an author's tale. I finally had my manuscript together. I had covers. I had it all laid out. Now it was time to upload to KDP, to self-publish. This is kind of like the final, everything else is kind of like you're working up to this, and emotionally you can kind of like, yeah, this, it's not public, even though you're working with these different people and they've all seen your work. And but when you upload the KDP and push the publish button, it's like you're totally vulnerable. It's like you've bared your whole being to the world now, instead of just the few little people that you've been working with in your circle. So with KDP, you have to prepare for print version. You prepare PDF to upload with your manuscript all laid out, ready to go. And Atticus does a really good job of, you can preview what your book will look like in there. I have a way to preview it. And you can change the fonts, you can change the layout, you can do all sorts of things. And the spacing and what the header and the footer. And then you can actually export it to your computer and then review it again. So here you've got this PDF and you upload it to KDP, and you have to, this is the tricky part, is you have to give it some keywords. You have to put it in a genre. And now Amazon has really limited the keywords you can use, the different genres you can use. So you really have to do some homework to figure out where is the best place to put this book. Now, like I mentioned earlier, these books are mystical, visionary fantasy. Well, there's no real category for that. So where do you put it? It's a little bit romantic fantasy. It's a little bit adult fantasy. It's a little bit religious fantasy. It's a little bit sword and sorcery, but not too much, because it's epic fantasy. I mean, where do you put it? Because you've only got two choices, and you better make them good. And so once you figure that out, it's a simple thing. The hard part is figuring out where to put it. And there's some uh, software apps that will really help, like Story Rocket's really good for doing this research. There's some other ones too, but that's the one I used, and or Publisher Rocket. And once you have your keywords and your genres picked, then the process itself is pretty easy. Now, I'm pretty technology oriented, so I don't have any trouble with computers and all these things usually. So it's just a matter of uploading the file, and Amazon will scan the file and tell you if something's not right. And if it's not right, they will say, you need to fix this, and then resubmit it. And then you also upload the cover separately. And there you have, when you're making the cover, you have to know how many pages your book are. So there's kind of like the layout and the cover, they go hand in hand. So once you know how many pages your book is, then you can lay out the cover, because you have to allow so much for the spine of the book. And Amazon's very particular about getting this figured out. And if you're within, it'll give you like a page or two grace. But if you're like 3 or 4 pages off, you got to redo the cover. So something I forgot to mention last time as part of the publishing process is you have to get an ISBN number. Now, if you want to just let Amazon be in charge of your book, they will supply you one. But I don't like to do that. I like to have my own stuff. I'm very, as if you haven't figured out by now, I'm very independent and self-sufficient, and I don't want anybody telling me what I can and can't do, at least within reason. And so that's why I went the whole self-publishing, and I made my own covers and I did my own layout just because I'm in charge. And the problem with having someone else doing this is if you want to make a change, especially in the layout, when you go to proof it and there's some words that aren't right, you have to send it back and you got to tell them where it is, and then they've got to fix it, and then they got to send it back to you, and you've got to proof it again. So there's a lot of back and forth. Whereas if you're doing it yourself, you say, oops, and you go fix it right there, and you're done. Same with the cover. If Amazon kicks back and says covers and the manuscript don't match, you can fix it right there. So, but you have to get an ISBN number, and usually you go to Bowker, and you can buy a package of them. You don't want to buy one because it's horribly expensive. But if you can buy like several, then it's not so bad. And you can also go register your book, with the Library of Congress and get a Library of Congress number. That's a little more involved because you have to submit the manuscript and pay a fee and do a bunch of little steps, but it can be done. It is doable. I did it. And I didn't know anything about it. So, they're really good at stepping you through the process. You just have to go to the right place. But before you can actually get well, I should say, you can buy your ISBNs, but you have to register them. And that ISBN has to go on your print copy. And then if you make an ebook, you have to have a separate ISBN number for your ebook. And so when you go register these with Bowker, you have to have the cover, and you have to have the title, and obviously the author, and a short description of like the blurb of what the book is about. And so you have to give, and do the same thing with the Library of Congress. So once you've got your ISBN's number set up through Bowker, then you can just take that information and put it in the Library of Congress registry. So, and what I found with the Library of Congress is if you have several books, you can do a bundle, several books at a time for just one price. It makes everything much more reasonable. So, so the process of uploading them wasn't very painful. You just upload the files, and then you have to go through and verify, and you got to make sure there's a few steps, make sure that the cover's right and everything is right. And then you're down to that push the button, publish button. Of course, Amazon reviews it before it goes live. But that's the part that is like, okay, it's time to take that leap of faith and move forward with this and birth your baby out into the world. And so once you do, it goes live on Amazon in a day or two. And you also set up an author page, your author central page, which talks about you, your bio, and the different books you have. And you can uh, monitor your specs with that, the sales and the different books that you have. And so that is kind of the short version of publishing. I think the biggest part, other than all the little technical steps, is the hardest part is getting the blurb, getting the key. Well, obviously you gotta have a title. So you gotta figure that out. And I use Chaldean numerology to find a title that as is auspicious, has a positive, good energy. Because let's face it, it's all energy. And the reader who looks at the book is going to, whether they're conscious of it or not, they are impacted by it. And so that's why the colors, the font, the images, the title, it's all part of this energetic presentation. So if you can have the title be auspicious, and then you got to get your tagline, the one sentence what this book is about, and then you get your blurb, a little bit more of a description, and those those are challenging. And I had a really hard time with that because I had this belief that my book was difficult to describe. How do I describe it? It's not typical. It's it's kind of like combining Robert Jordan's A Wheel of Time series, which is had a spiritual elements to it, but it was very action oriented. Actually, is kind of similar in the sense that each one of the characters had a gift that they had to develop. And it's also combining like Paulo Coelho's, like The Alchemist and some of his other stories, where there's like a message underneath the story. So it's sort of, and then lately I've read another book, which I think could probably be equated to these books. It's called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And, so it's a little bit of that same thing. It's like a story that also gives you a way to look at life and a way to live your life. So, how do you write a blurb for that and convey that without sounding too uh, unavailable? And then there's the keywords. And I had help with the marketing lady and with the editors for all of these. So I think I came up with something pretty good. But then my son showed me about AI and ChatGPT and then Claude. And so I took and typed in what I thought the book was about. And I said, come up with a tagline and come up with a blurb. And that's actually how I ended up creating my blurbs. And then I sent them to my editor and said, okay, well, I reworked them first. And then I said, okay, how can we, is this say what the book is about? Because the editors, they do know after working through it so much, they have their own idea of how to describe this. And so that was very helpful for me. And then you can ask the AI, the chat GPT to come up with keywords. What are some keywords to do it and the genre. And so in other words, you can use AI to help you brainstorm and come up with the words that are in your mind, but you don't know how to get them out and you don't know how to express them. So something else I used, like I said, I was taking a lot of classes, a lot of writing classes, and a lot of study groups. Since I am a tech person, there were some uh, writing apps that help with the editing process. And I have trouble the way I word my sentences is sometimes a little disjointed, or what I'm trying to say comes out really blunt. So it's kind of helpful to have like AI or these other writing programs smooth out the sentence, add the right words, or rephrase the sentence with the same, but to make it flow better. So I mostly use Pro Writing Aid, and I really liked it because I could put my documents in there or whatever it is I was writing, my short story, whatever it is. And then I could go through and the areas that I had trouble with, the areas I had trouble with conveying my meaning, I would go to highlight it and I would say rephrase. And it would come up with all these other suggestions of how I could rephrase that sentence or maybe that paragraph. And I would, if I like something, I'd pick it. And if a lot of times I just picked out one word out of this phrase and one word out of that phrase and a word out of that phrase and reuse that to rewrite my sentence. So you can use a lot of technology to help. Now, I really believe that because I experimented with the with AI, with the chat and with Claude, um, it's getting better. But I don't believe it can write for you. Forget that. I think it's great for brainstorming. You tell what you want, and it will come up with all sorts of ideas, and some of them are crazy as can be, and some of them are actually very good. It can help you smooth out sentences, but you have to watch chat. It will get carried away and go off on its own tangent. So there are caveats to using it for things like this. But you can tell it to analyze your writing style, either both Chat GPT or Claude. Analyze your writing style and then write like you would, like in your same voice and yours with the same tone and the same sort of words. But you still have to watch them because they sort of, it's hard for artificial intelligence to understand what's in your mind. And so it's useful to use it as a tool to help you understand yourself. And then you can write from there. But I know some people who are just saying, write me a story about whatever. And it's it's superficial. The AI doesn't understand the subtle nuances of emotions and emotional connections and what goes on inside. It's getting better. I've had some very serious chats with Claude about this, but it's still, when it's writing, it doesn't understand that maybe instead of solving the problem with your sword or your knife or attacking in a violent way, there's other ways to solve a problem. And that's where I ran into challenges was with using AI. So I use it on a limited basis just to help me be able to convey what I'm trying to say in a more smooth and flowing manner. But some people hate AI. I use it a lot for the images, like this image that's my background here. I take images and I take and cut and paste and, make them up, play with them. I think AI is great for that. But the writing part, creative, I should say creative writing, it needs the human touch. That's what I'll say about AI. So that pretty much wraps up my publishing journey. I worked some more on, went back and forth. This book was extremely hard because I went back and forth with editors and I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote and rewrote it and reorganized it and rewrote it and reorganized. But eventually I finally got it published. And I used it, I used quite a bit of AI art in it. And it has a bunch of fables from the world, Ilara's world. And she's the one that is teaching the spiritual practices. And there's exercises and self-contemplation questions. So I took the fables out of there and put them into another book, Tales of the Leonini. And these are, so because I split it out, I had to create something to tie it all together. So one day when I was trying to figure this out, one day my whole yard was full of crows. I don't know, there must have been hundreds of them out there. And you know how crows, they sit in the tree and then there's some walking on the ground and and then they rotate and then they fly over here and fly over here. But I mean, my whole yard was just covered with crows. And I thought, oh, well, they're giving me a message. I'm supposed to use crow as the bridge between all these stories. And so I created Crow, Saucy Crow, to be to navigate, to be the guide between all the stories. And so, yeah, see, Crow has something to say about every story. So that was fun. So that pretty much concludes how I got the books made and published. But what the fascinating part is the effect it had on me and on my life. And I'll talk to you about that in the next video. So until next time.